It's March 15th, 44 BC. In the heart of Rome, inside the Curia of Pompey, the air is electric with tension. Gaius Julius Caesar, the most powerful man in the world, takes his seat, and then it happens. A flash of steel, then another, and another. He's surrounded, and in moments he lies dead on the floor, stabbed around 23 times. The killers? They weren't foreign invaders. They were senators. Some were former allies, men he had pardoned, even protégés. So how does that happen? How does a man from a respectable, but not exactly top-tier family climb so high he can touch the sun, only to be butchered in the very government he swore to protect? This story isn't just about an assassination. It's about how one man's colossal ego, a force as powerful as any army he ever led, brought a 500-year-old republic to its knees. To really get it, we need to rewind. By the time Caesar shows up, the Roman Republic is already in trouble. It's a pressure cooker of inequality and political gridlock. You had two main political flavors, but don't think of them as modern political parties. On one side were the optimates, the best men, the established aristocracy, trying desperately to hang on to their power. On the other were the populares, who weren't an organized group, but politicians who used popular causes to get ahead. Into this mess, Gaius Julius Caesar is born. His family, the Julii, were patricians, and they had a killer origin story. They claimed to be descended from the goddess Venus herself. That kind of heritage gives a guy a serious sense of destiny. And Caesar's defining trait from day one was ambition. He was smart, he was charming, and when he needed to be, he was absolutely ruthless. He cleverly threw in his lot with the popular crowd. By championing things like land reform for the poor, he built a fan base with the common people, bypassing the stuffy aristocratic channels that would have slowed him down. He saw that real power wasn't just in the Senate anymore. It was in the streets and with the soldiers. By 60 BC, Caesar is a rising star, but he's not the only big shot in Rome. There's Pompey the Great, Rome's most famous general, and Marcus Licinius Crassus, a man so rich it was almost comical. Each one was a powerhouse on their own, but together, they'd be unstoppable. And Caesar, the ultimate political operator, made it happen. He put together an informal alliance we now call the First Triumvirate. It wasn't an official government body. It was basically a backroom deal between three titans to run the show for their own benefit. Pompey brought the military clout, Crassus brought the cash, and Caesar brought the political genius and popular support to hold it all together. This trio didn't exactly neuter the Senate, but they certainly dominated it, pushing their own agendas and candidates. But for Caesar, this was just a stepping stone. His real loyalty was to himself. There were even rumors that he made a point of having affairs with the wives of his political rivals, a power play showing his need to dominate in every arena. He knew that to get the absolute power he wanted, he needed one more thing: his own army. He got his chance with the governorship of Gaul, a huge territory covering roughly modern-day France and its neighbors. For nearly 10 years, from 58 to 50 BC, Caesar led a military campaign that was both brutal and brilliant. But the Gallic Wars weren't just about conquest, they were an exercise in brand management. Caesar was a one-man PR firm. He wrote his own press releases, the commentaries on the Gallic War, sending them back to Rome to be read to the public. In them, he spun a story of himself as Rome's indispensable hero. Scholars today argue that he likely exaggerated the number and fierceness of his enemies to make his own victories look even more incredible. He painted a picture of himself as the tough, decisive commander who shared every hardship with his men. And it worked. His legions weren't fighting for some abstract idea of Rome. They were fighting for Caesar. Victories like the legendary siege of Alesia against the Gallic leader Vercingetorix made him a living legend and incredibly rich. Back in Rome, the Senate and his supposed ally Pompey watched all this with growing alarm. Caesar wasn't just a popular politician anymore. He was a conquering hero with a fiercely loyal private army, and that was a combination that scared them to death. By now, the triumvirate was a memory. Crassus was dead, killed in a disastrous war in the east, and the alliance between Caesar and Pompey had curdled into pure rivalry. The Senate, now firmly on Pompey's side, saw its moment. The political showdown came to a head in early January of 49 BC. They gave Caesar an ultimatum. Disband your army and come home as a private citizen. If he obeyed, he'd almost certainly face prosecution and political ruin. If he refused, it was treason. For Caesar, was it really a choice? On the night of January 10th, 49 BC, he marched his 13th legion to the Rubicon River, the legal boundary of Italy. To cross it with an army was a declaration of war on his own country. Ancient writers say he paused, fully understanding the weight of the moment. Then with the words tradition gives us, alea iacta est, the die is cast, he crossed. This was his ego made manifest. His personal honor was now more important than the laws and even the survival of the Republic. The civil war was shockingly fast. Pompey's legions, despite their numbers, were crushed at the Battle of Pharsalus. Caesar chased his rival to Egypt, got involved in a local power struggle, and put the young Cleopatra on the throne. After mopping up the last pockets of resistance, he returned to Rome as its undisputed master. The Senate, defeated and broken, could only pile honors on him. He was named dictator, an old emergency title, first for a year, then for 10, and finally in 44 BC, dictator perpetuo. Dictator for life. And you know what? He was actually a good ruler. He tackled Rome's debt crisis, reformed the tax code, and launched massive public works projects that gave jobs to the poor. He expanded the Senate to around 900 members, packing it with his supporters and people from the provinces, which diluted the power of his old enemies. He even reformed the calendar, giving us the Julian calendar that, with a few tweaks, we still use. But don't be fooled. Every single reform was also a way to tighten his grip on power. He wasn't trying to save the Republic. He was rebuilding it in his own image. He truly believed that only he was smart enough to govern, which made the Senate and its traditions totally irrelevant in his mind. He had all the power of a king but shrewdly refused the title, knowing how much Romans hated it. But in every way that mattered, the Republic was already dead. But a group of senators saw exactly what was happening. More than 60 of them, led by men like Gaius Cassius Longinus, Marcus Junius Brutus, and the often overlooked Decimus Brutus Albinus, started to plot. The involvement of Marcus Brutus was especially personal. Caesar had pardoned him after the Civil War, given him high office, and was famously the longtime lover of Brutus's mother, Servilia. But Brutus saw himself as a defender of Roman liberty, and to him, Caesar was a disease that had to be cut out. So on the Ides of March, 44 BC, they made their move. According to the stories, Caesar ignored his wife's nightmares and warnings from soothsayers. His ego simply wouldn't let him look scared. He walked into the Senate meeting and was met with daggers. The man who conquered Gaul and defeated every rival was brought down by the very system he had dismantled. The assassins called themselves the Liberators, thinking they had saved the Republic. They were tragically wrong. They hadn't thought about what came next. The people of Rome didn't celebrate. They were horrified, and riots broke out at Caesar's funeral. The Liberators didn't restore the Republic. They just created a power vacuum. The chaos that followed sparked another round of civil wars that raged for roughly 13 years. The Republic couldn't take another hit. In the end, one man came out on top: Caesar's own grandnephew and adopted heir, Octavian. Octavian learned from his great-uncle's biggest mistake. He took all the power but kept the illusion of the Republic alive. He called himself first citizen, not king or dictator. But he was, in all but name, Rome's first emperor, Augustus. The Republic was gone. Julius Caesar's ego carried him to heights few people have ever known. He was a genius, a reformer, a brilliant leader. But that same ego made him blind to the enemies he created and deaf to the traditions he broke. In his reach for ultimate power, he didn't just bring about his own death. He dragged the entire world he wanted to rule down with him. The Republic died on the floor with Caesar, a timeless warning of how the ambition of one person can tear a nation apart. If you love learning about the giants who walked the ancient world, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe for more dives into history's most epic moments. And drop a comment below. Do you think Caesar was a hero who saved Rome from itself, or a tyrant who destroyed it for his own glory?